Thalrin stood on the observation deck of the battlecruiser Eternal Vigil, watching the stars stretch across the void. His blue-gray skin reflected the dim lighting of the ship, and his 4 fingers drummed against the metal railing. He had served in the Galactic Coalition fleet for 20 cycles, fighting the Vrexian swarm across dozens of systems. He thought he had seen everything war could offer. He was wrong. The COM system crackled to life. All senior officers report to the briefing room immediately. Thalrin made his way through the narrow corridors, passing crew members from a dozen different species. The Quelari like himself, the insectoid Vril, the massive Gordain warriors. All of them had been fighting the Vrexians for years now, and all of them looked tired. The swarm was relentless, breeding faster than the Coalition could kill them. When he entered the briefing room, Fleet Commander Zalmoth was already standing at the holographic display. The old Gordain's face was unreadable, but his tail swished nervously. That was never a good sign. "We have new allies joining the fight," Zalmoth announced. "The humans have agreed to send military forces to assist the Coalition." The room erupted in confused murmurs. Thalrin had heard of humans. They were a young species, barely 200 years into space travel. Most Coalition members considered them primitive. Their technology was crude, their vessels slow, and their military experience limited to fighting each other. "With respect, Commander," said Vexril, a Vril tactical officer, "what can humans possibly offer? They have no experience fighting a threat like the Vrexians." "They have experience fighting wars," Zalmoth replied. "That will have to be enough." They arrive within the hour. Thalrin returned to his station and pulled up files on humanity. What he read confused him. Humans had spent most of their history fighting wars among themselves. Massive conflicts that killed millions. They had even created weapons capable of destroying their own planet. What kind of species did that? An hour later, the human fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel. Thalrin watched through the viewport and felt his stomach turn. The human ships were ugly things, retrofitted colony vessels covered in welded armor plates. They looked like they had been built in a scrapyard. Weapon systems jutted out at odd angles. Hull breaches had been patched with whatever materials were available. These were not warships. They were flying junk. "This is Commander Deho of the human vessel Indomitable," a voice came over the com. "Requesting permission to dock?" Zalmoth granted permission, and soon the human delegation arrived on the Eternal Vigil. Thalrin was assigned as their liaison officer, so he met them at the docking bay. Commander Deho was shorter than Thalrin expected, maybe 6 feet tall. He wore a dark blue uniform with strange insignias. His black hair was cut short, and his eyes were dark and sharp. Behind him came Lieutenant Myong, a woman with her hair tied back in a severe bun. Both of them moved with a calm confidence that seemed out of place for such a young species. "Commander Deho," Thalrin greeted him in standard Galactic. "I am Thalrin, tactical officer. I will help you understand Coalition procedures." Deho smiled and extended his hand. Thalrin hesitated, then took it. The human's grip was firm and warm. "Pleasure to meet you, Thalrin. We're ready to get to work." The strategy meeting began an hour later. Holographic displays showed the Helios sector, where Vrexian forces had established a major staging ground. Coalition intelligence estimated over 50 hive ships in the area, with millions of warrior drones. "Our standard approach is a siege tactic," Zalmoth explained. "Long-range bombardment, systematic destruction of their outer defenses, then a concentrated push through weakened positions." Deho leaned forward. "How long does that typically take?" 3 to 4 weeks if we're fortunate." "We don't have that kind of time," Deho said. "Every week we wait, they breed more drones. We need to hit them fast and hard." Vexril clicked his mandibles in disapproval. Fast attacks against fortified positions result in unacceptable casualties. Coalition doctrine prioritizes preservation of life. "Coalition doctrine is losing the war," Myong said quietly. Every head turned toward her. She didn't flinch. "You've been fighting for 5 years, and the Vrexians control more territory now than when you started." The room fell silent. It was true, but no one wanted to say it out loud. Daeho pulled up his own tactical display. Here's what we propose. Human ships will punch through their defensive line here and here. We'll draw their forces into a fight while your heavy cruisers flank from these positions. Once we've created chaos in their formations, you hit them with everything you've got. Thalrin studied the plan. It was insane. The human ships would be torn apart in minutes. Commander Daeho, your vessels will not survive that kind of assault. The Vrexians will swarm you? Probably, Daeho agreed. But we'll buy you the opening you need. Thalrin looked into Daeho's eyes and saw something that made his blood run cold. It wasn't fear or bravado. It was calculation. This human had already accepted that he might die, and he was fine with it. This is unacceptable, Zalmoth said. I cannot approve a plan that treats allied forces as disposable. With respect, Commander, Daeho replied, we're all disposable. The question is whether our deaths accomplish something. This plan gives us the best chance of winning. The meeting continued for another hour, but eventually Zalmoth agreed to a modified version of the human plan. As everyone filed out, Thalrin approached Daeho. Why did your people volunteer for this? He asked. You could have stayed home. This isn't your war. Daeho looked at him with those dark, sharp eyes. When we joined the coalition, we studied the Vrexians. They don't negotiate. They don't stop. They consume everything in their path. If they win here, eventually they'll reach Earth. Better to fight them now, while we have allies. But your ships, Thalrin said, they're not designed for combat. You're outgunned and outnumbered. We usually are, Daeho replied. Humans have been fighting from a disadvantage for thousands of years. We've gotten pretty good at it. That night, Thalrin couldn't sleep. He kept thinking about the humans and their terrible ships and their calm acceptance of death. He pulled up more files on human history. The wars, the weapons, the stubborn refusal to surrender even when victory seemed impossible, and he began to feel something he hadn't felt in years of fighting the Vrexians. He began to feel afraid. The Battle of Kepler's Gate began at dawn, though there was no real dawn in space. Thalrin marked time by the chronometer as the coalition fleet moved into position. 53 ships against an estimated 60 Vrexian hive ships. The odds were not good, but they rarely were in this war. Thalrin sat at his tactical station, monitoring the fleet's movements. The human ships took up position at the front of the formation, their ugly hulls standing out among the sleek coalition vessels. He opened a direct come line to the Indomitable. Human fleet, this is Thalrin. Confirm your status. All systems green, Dao's voice came back calm and steady. We're ready when you are. The Vrexian fleet detected them at precisely 0600 hours. Immediately, the hive ships began spawning fighter drones. Thousands of them, like insects pouring from a disturbed nest. They swarmed outward in a dark cloud that blocked the stars. Coalition fleet, begin bombardment, Zalmoth ordered. The heavy cruisers opened fire with their main batteries. Plasma bolts and particle beams lanced across the void, smashing into Vrexian shields. The hive ships returned fire, their organic weapons spitting acid and bioplasma. Space lit up with explosions. Human fleet, maintain formation and provide covering fire, Zalrin commanded. Negative, Daeho replied. We're going in. Before anyone could respond, the 12 human ships broke formation and accelerated directly toward the Vrexian lines. Their engines burned bright, pushing them to speeds that would tear most ships apart. Commander Daeho, return to formation immediately. Zalmoth roared. You're moving into a kill zone. That's the idea, Daeho said. Thalrin watched in horror as the human ships dove into the swarm of Vrexian fighters. The drones converged on them like predators sensing wounded prey. The humans' shields flared and died within seconds. Hull plating tore away. Atmosphere vented into space. Any reasonable commander would have ordered a retreat. The humans accelerated. Their weapons blazed with sustained fire. Unlike coalition ships that used energy weapons requiring cooldown periods, the humans fired constantly. Thalrin realized they were using kinetic projectiles, primitive bullets fired at hypersonic speeds. The projectiles tore through Vrexian drones like paper. One human frigate, the Soul's Pride, took a direct hit from a bioplasma lance. Half the ship's stern section melted away. Thalrin pulled up their status, ready to mark them as destroyed. The ship kept moving, kept firing. Soul's Pride, report status, Thalrin called out. We've lost engines 3 and 4. Life support is offline in sections C through G. And we're venting atmosphere, came the response from their captain. But guns still work. Continuing attack run. You need to evacuate your crew. We will. After we're done here, the human ships smashed into the Vrexian formation like hammers. They fired everything they had, weapons that should have overheated and failed continuing to discharge. Thalrin saw one human destroyer ram a Vrexian cruiser at full speed, both ships exploding in a brilliant flash. All human ships. This is Deho, execute Thunderbolt. The remaining human vessels suddenly changed course, converging on a single hive ship. Thalrin realized with shock that they were all heading for the same target. They're going to ram it, Vexrel said in disbelief. But at the last second, the human ships deployed small craft. Dozens of boarding pods shot from launch tubes, latching onto the hive ship's hull like ticks. The ships themselves broke away, circling back to engage more drones. Thalrin, we need fire support on that hive ship, Deho said. We've got teams inside, but they're about to get swarmed. Understood. Redirecting fire. The Eternal Vigil and 3 other coalition ships focused their weapons on the hive ship's surrounding drones, clearing a path. Thalrin opened the frequency for the boarding teams, and immediately wished he hadn't. The sounds coming through were horrific. Gunfire, screaming, the wet tearing sounds of close combat. He heard someone shouting orders in human language, then an explosion that made the speakers crackle. Boarding Team 7, report. Thalrin called. This is Sergeant Jiwan, a woman's voice came back, breathing hard. We've secured the primary nerve cluster. Setting charges now. Sergeant, what are those weapons? They don't sound like standard coalition arms. Bullets, Jiwan replied between bursts of gunfire. Turns out Vrexian hides don't stop good old-fashioned lead very well. Their ships are organic, lots of tight corridors. Perfect for close combat. How many of you are there? Started with 20. Down to 11. We'll make it work. Thalrin heard more gunfire, then an explosion that cut the feed. For 10 seconds, there was silence. Then Jiwan's voice came back. Charges set. Team 7 evacuating. Recommend all ships clear the area. The boarding teams retreated to their pods and launched back to the human ships. 30 seconds later, the hive ship exploded from the inside. The blast was enormous, taking out 6 nearby Vrexian vessels in the chain reaction. The Vrexian formation broke. For the first time in the entire war, Thalrin saw them retreat. The swarm pulled back, leaving debris and dying ships floating in the void. Coalition fleet. Pursue and destroy, Zalmuth ordered. The battle lasted another 3 hours. But the outcome was decided in those first terrible minutes. When the humans charged into certain death and came out the other side, when it finally ended, Thalrin looked at the casualty reports. 4 human ships destroyed. 3 more so damaged they would never fly again. Of the 12 that started the battle, only 5 were still combat-capable. Nearly 600 humans dead, he opened a channel to Deho. Commander, my deepest condolences for your losses. Your people fought with great honor. There was a pause. Thank you, Thalrin. But we're not done yet. How soon until we can move to the next target? Thalrin stared at the COM display. You wish to continue fighting? Your fleet needs repairs. Your people need time to grieve. We'll grieve later, Deho said. Right now, the Vrexians are off balance. We need to hit them again before they can regroup. But your casualties were acceptable. We accomplished the mission. That's what matters. The channel closed. Thalrin sat in silence, looking at the list of dead humans scrolling across his screen. 600 names. 600 people who woke up this morning and decided that dying today was acceptable if it meant winning around him. The bridge crew worked quietly, processing the battle data. But Thauron couldn't focus. He kept thinking about Sergeant Jiwan's voice, calm and professional even as she fought for her life inside a Rexian hive ship. He thought about the soul's pride. Continuing to fight even as half the ship melted away, he thought about Commander Deho's response to losing 600 people. Acceptable. Thauron had fought in dozens of battles. He had seen friends die. He understood sacrifice. But this was different. The humans didn't just accept death as a possibility. They treated it as a tool, something to be used when necessary, and they were already preparing for the next fight, for the first time since joining the fleet. Thauron wondered if the Coalition had invited something worse than the Vrexians into this war. The Coalition fleet limped to a neutral station for repairs and resupply. The battle had been won, but everyone needed time to recover. Everyone except the humans, apparently. Thauron watched from his quarters as human crew members worked around the clock, patching holes in their ships with whatever materials they could find. He decided he needed to understand them better. If he was going to keep fighting alongside humans, he needed to know what made them tick. So he did something he rarely did. He went to their section of the station for dinner. The human quarters were loud and crowded. Music played from speakers, some kind of rhythmic sound with words in their language. The air smelled strange, full of cooking scents that Thauron didn't recognize. Several humans looked up when he entered, but most just nodded and went back to their conversations. Lieutenant Meong waved him over to a table where she sat with Corporal Hyunsik, a stocky man with scarred hands. "Thauron? Come sit. You need to try real food." Thauron settled into a chair clearly not designed for his species. Meong pushed a plate toward him. "This is called bibimbap. Rice, vegetables, meat, and sauce. Mix it up." He tried a small bite. The flavors exploded in his mouth, some spicy, some sweet, all intense. It was nothing like the bland nutrition paste served in Coalition mess halls. "This is good. Cooking is important to us," Hyunsik said. "Reminds us of home. Reminds us what we're fighting for." Thauron ate slowly, listening to the humans around him talk. They weren't discussing the battle or mourning their dead. They were telling jokes, sharing stories, laughing. It seemed wrong somehow. 600 of their people had died just days ago. "You seem troubled," Meong said, watching him. "I don't understand," Thauron admitted. "How can you be so calm? So many of your people died in the battle. Don't you grieve?" Meong and Hyunsik exchanged a look. "Of course we grieve," Meong said softly. "But we do it privately in our own time. Out here we need to stay focused. Grieving can wait. That seems cold." "Maybe," Hyunsik said. "But humans have been fighting wars for a long time. We've learned that if you stop to mourn every death, you'll never get anything done. The dead would understand. They'd want us to keep fighting." Thauron took another bite of food, thinking, "I read about your history. The wars you fought. Millions dead. Entire cities destroyed. How did your species survive that?" "We're stubborn," Meong said with a slight smile. "And we adapt. Every war taught us something new. How to fight better. How to survive worse conditions. How to keep going when everything says we should quit." A young human approached the table, a woman with engineer insignia on her uniform. "Lieutenant, sorry to interrupt. We got those replacement parts you wanted. The ones from the destroyed ships. Salvage from the wrecks?" Thauron asked. "Of course," the engineer said. "Can't waste good materials. The crews who died would want their ships to keep fighting." She left. Thauron stared at his plate. "You're taking parts from ships where your friends died." "They're not using them anymore," Hyunsik said. There was no cruelty in his voice, just simple practicality. "And we need those parts. Waste is a sin in war." The conversation moved to other topics. Hyunsik told a story about growing up on Earth, about mountains and oceans that Thauron could barely imagine. Meong talked about her family, parents who owned a restaurant. Normal things. Human things. Then Commander Deho joined them, carrying his own plate of food. He sat down with a tired sigh. "Thauron, Good to see you here. How are you settling in?
I'm trying to understand, Thalrin said.
Your people, your methods, the way you fight. What about it confuses you? Everything. You take losses that would break any other species and just keep going. You use tactics that sacrifice your own people. You salvage your dead comrades' equipment without hesitation. It's also brutal. Deho finished. Yes, it is. War is brutal. We learned that lesson early and well.
But the Quelari have been fighting wars for thousands of years, Thalrin protested.
We understand sacrifice and strategy. But we also value life. We try to minimize casualties. And you're losing the war, Myong said quietly. The words hung in the air.
Thalrin wanted to argue but couldn't.
It was true. Deho leaned back in his chair. Let me tell you about humanity, Thalrin. We evolved on a death world. Everything on Earth either wanted to eat us or kill us. We were slow, weak, and had no natural weapons. By all rights, we should have gone extinct. But you didn't. No, because we had one advantage. We don't quit. We learned to hunt animals bigger and stronger than us by just following them until they collapsed from exhaustion. We call it persistence hunting. Chase something long enough and eventually it gives up. We don't. Yunsik nodded. And then we started fighting each other. Thousands of years of warfare. We got very good at killing. Too good, maybe? We invented weapons that could end our whole species. Came close to using them a few times. So why didn't you? Because we also learned that survival requires sacrifice, Deho said. During our worst wars, ordinary people did extraordinary things. Soldiers threw themselves on grenades to save their friends. Doctors stayed in plague cities when they could have fled. Parents gave their children the last of the food. We learned that sometimes one person has to die so others can live. The Quelari understand honor and sacrifice, Thalrin said. It's not about honor, Myong said. It's about mathematics. Cold, brutal mathematics. If 600 deaths today prevent 6,000 deaths tomorrow, you make that trade. You hate it. It tears you apart inside. But you do it anyway. Thalrin thought about the battle. About the humans charging into the Vrexian swarm. You calculate acceptable losses before you even begin fighting. Yes, Deho said. We know some of us won't come back. We accept it. Because the alternative is letting the Vrexians win. And that's not acceptable. A proximity alarm sounded. Everyone's communicators buzzed simultaneously. Thalrin checked his. A Vrexian scout ship had been detected near the station. Likely gathering intelligence, the coalition crews would scramble to their ships, run through pre-flight checks, and launch in maybe 20 minutes. If they were fast, the humans were already running for their ships. Thalrin followed Deho toward the docking bay. You're launching immediately? Don't you need to prepare? We're always prepared, Deho called back. That's the secret, Thalrin. We're always ready for the next fight. Within 5 minutes, human ships were launching. No checklists, no formal procedures, just controlled chaos that somehow worked. Thalrin watched from the observation deck as they pursued the Vrexian scout. It wasn't running away. It was transmitting data back to its fleet. The humans caught it anyway and destroyed it in less than a minute. When Deho returned, Thalrin was waiting. You enjoy this, don't you? The fighting? Deho looked at him with those dark, sharp eyes. No, I hate it. Every death weighs on me. Every order I give that sends someone to die keeps me awake at night. But someone has to do it. Someone has to stand between civilization and the darkness. It might as well be us. That night, Thalrin lay in his bunk, unable to sleep. He finally understood what he saw in human eyes. It wasn't bloodlust or madness. It was acceptance. They had accepted that they might die. They had accepted that they might have to do terrible things. They had accepted that winning meant sacrifice, and that acceptance made them the most dangerous thing in the galaxy. The mission briefing lasted only 10 minutes. Thalrin had been in briefings that lasted hours, with detailed analysis and contingency planning, but humans didn't work that way. Deho showed them a hologram of a massive Vrexian structure deep in enemy territory and said 3 words. "We destroy this." The target was called a superhive. Intelligence estimated it could produce 50,000 warrior drones per day. As long as it existed, the Vrexians could replace their losses faster than the coalition could inflict them. It had to be destroyed. The problem was simple. It was protected by 3 defensive perimeters, dozens of hive ships, and it was located 6 jumps deep into Vrexian-controlled space. It was a suicide mission. Everyone knew it. "We need volunteers," Zalmuth said. "Coalition doctrine requires that no species commit more than 20% of their forces to high-risk operations." "Every human volunteers," Deho said immediately. "Commander, that's your entire fleet." "I know, but I only need 60% of them for the mission. The rest will stay behind to maintain defensive positions." Zalmuth looked uncomfortable. "This violates all our protocols." "Your protocols are designed for species that want to survive," Myong said. "We want to win. There's a difference." In the end, 8 human ships were selected for the strike force, along with token contingents from other coalition species. Thalron was assigned as the coalition observer. He specifically requested placement on the indomitable Deho's ship. "You don't have to come," Deho told him privately. "This is going to get ugly." "I know. That's why I need to be there." They launched at midnight station time. The fleet moved in complete radio silence, using passive sensors only. They jumped from system to system, avoiding Vrexian patrol routes. The tension built with each jump. Every crew member knew they were getting deeper into enemy territory, further from any hope of rescue. On the 3rd day, they were detected. A Vrexian patrol squadron found them and immediately called for reinforcements. Deho made a snap decision. Instead of trying to hide or run, they attacked. The human ships tore through the patrol in minutes, but the damage was done. The Vrexians knew they were coming. "We have approximately 6 hours before they can mass a response fleet," Myong said, reading sensor data. "We need to reach the superhive before then." "Then we go fast," Deho said. "All ships maximum speed. Ignore everything that's not a direct threat." The fleet burned through space at speeds that made Thalron's bones ache. Human ships weren't built for this kind of sustained acceleration, but they did it anyway. 2 ships suffered engine failures. They kept going on backup power. Pushing their reactors beyond safety limits, they reached the superhive with 30 minutes to spare. It was enormous. A twisted mass of organic matter and biomechanical systems the size of a small moon. Thousands of drones swarmed around it like insects. Defensive platforms bristled with weapons. It was the most heavily defended target Thalron had ever seen. "All ships, this is Deho. We all knew what this mission was when we volunteered. Today we're going to do something impossible. And we're going to do it because no one else can. No speeches, no prayers. Just do your jobs. Make every shot count. Make every death mean something." The battle began. The human ships dove straight into the defensive perimeter. Weapons fire filled the void. Shields collapsed. Hulls cracked. The Indomitable took a direct hit that tore through the cargo bay. Atmosphere vented into space, taking 3 crew members with it. Captain Borum's voice came over the comm. "Engineering, seal that breach. All non-essential personnel, evacuate to escape pods." Thalron moved toward the evacuation point. He looked back and saw that no humans were following him. "Aren't you evacuating?" he asked Myong. She looked up from her console, confused. "Why would we evacuate? The mission isn't complete. The ship is badly damaged." "It's still flying. Guns still work. That's all that matters." Thalron watched as human crew members pulled emergency harnesses from storage lockers and chained themselves to their stations. They were making sure they couldn't leave even if they wanted to. "You're all insane?" he whispered. "Probably," Deho agreed. "But we're committed now." 3 human ships broke through the inner defensive line and launched their assault teams. The boarding pods attached to the superhive's surface like parasites. Thalron watched the video feeds as human soldiers cut their way inside. The fighting was brutal and chaotic. The corridors inside the superhive were filled with warrior drones and toxic atmosphere. The humans fought with projectile weapons, grenades, and sometimes just their bare hands when ammunition ran out. Thauron found himself in one of the boarding pods, part of Strike Team 7 led by Sergeant G1. He had demanded to observe the ground operation. Now he regretted it. They cut through the hull and dropped into a nightmare. The inside of the superhive was organic walls pulsing with alien life. Drones poured from side passages. G1's team opened fire, the sound of their weapons deafening in the confined space. "Move! Keep moving!" G1 shouted. "We stop, we die." They pushed deeper, fighting every meter. Thauron's weapon clicked empty. A drone lunged at him. G1 put 3 rounds through its head, then pulled him forward. "Stay close to me," she ordered. A massive warrior drone blocked their path. It was twice the size of a normal drone, armored and deadly. It killed 2 humans before G1 managed to place a grenade in its mouth. The explosion painted the walls with gore. "Core structure should be ahead," Miao's voice crackled over the comm. "You're almost there." They reached the central nerve cluster, a pulsing mass of bioneural tissue. Hyunsik and his demolition team started placing nuclear charges. The superhive seemed to realize what was happening. Drones flooded the chamber. "Set the timers," Yuan screamed. "We're leaving in 30 seconds whether they're armed or not." A drone tackled Thauron. He felt claws dig into his armor. Then G1 was there, dragging the creature off him. It bit her, tearing through her armor. She ignored it and shot the thing at point-blank range. Charges set. "Go, go, go." They ran. Behind them, more drones pursued. The team's numbers dwindled as they fought their way back to the extraction point. Of the 20 who entered, only 12 made it to the pod's dot as they launched. Thauron saw his pod's control panel flashing red. Malfunction. The pod was drifting, not accelerating. He would never reach the ships in time. The pod door opened. Private Young-ho stood there in a functional pod. "Get in here," he shouted. "There's not enough room for both of us." "I know." Young-ho pushed him inside and sealed the door. Through the viewport, Thauron watched the young human override the pod's controls. Sending Thauron toward safety, Young-ho turned back toward the superhive. He raised his weapon and started firing at pursuing drones, buying the other pods time to escape. "No!" Thauron screamed. "Come back!" But Young-ho couldn't hear him. The nuclear charges detonated. The superhive exploded in a blast that lit up the entire sector. Everything within 1,000 kilometers was vaporized instantly, including Private Young-ho. The surviving ships regrouped and jumped to safety. Of the 8 human ships that started the mission, 4 made it back. 270 humans dead. But the superhive was gone. In the medical bay, a doctor treated Thauron's injuries. They were minor, just scratches. He felt numb. "Private Young-ho gave his life for me," he told the doctor. "Why would he do that?" The doctor, a tired-looking woman, didn't look up from her work. "Because you needed saving. That's enough reason for us. But he barely knew me." "Doesn't matter. You were there. You were fighting beside us. That makes you one of us. We don't leave our own behind." Later, Daeho found him staring out a viewport at the stars. "I'm told you're requesting my nephew be awarded the Coalition Medal of Honor." "Your nephew?" "Young-ho. He was my sister's son. Just turned 21. Daeho's voice was steady, but his eyes were red. "The award isn't necessary. He died saving me. He died doing his duty. That's what we do." Daeho paused. "But thank you. His mother will appreciate it." "How do you do this?" Thauron asked. "How do you keep losing people you love and keep fighting?" "Because if we stop, they died for nothing. We honor them by finishing what they started." Thauron looked at this human commander who had just lost his nephew and showed no tears, no rage, just calm determination. And finally he understood. Humans didn't fear death. They feared failure. They feared letting down the people who had already sacrificed everything. That fear made them unstoppable. Thauron spent 3 days in the medical bay recovering from his injuries. They were minor, the doctor said. Just cuts and bruises. But every time he closed his eyes, he saw Young-ho standing in that pod doorway. Saw him turning back toward certain death without hesitation. On the 4th day, Daeho visited him. The human commander carried a bottle of clear liquid and 2 small glasses. "How are you feeling?" Daeho asked, sitting beside the bed. "Physically, I'm fine. Mentally?" Thauron shook his head. "I don't know." Daeho poured the liquid into both glasses and handed one to Thauron. "This is called soju. It's traditional in my culture to drink when remembering the dead." Thauron took the glass. The liquid burned his throat, but he drank it anyway. "I can't stop thinking about him." "About Young-ho. Neither can I," Daeho said quietly. "He was a good kid, smart, wanted to be an engineer. Build ships instead of fighting in them." He poured another glass. "But he did what needed to be done." "You all do," Thauron said. "That's what terrifies me. You do what needs to be done, no matter the cost. Someone has to, but why you? Why do humans carry this burden?" Daeho was quiet for a long moment. "Do you know what my people were doing 200 years ago? We were fighting each other, killing each other over land, resources, ideas. We almost destroyed ourselves. Then we made it to space and found the galaxy full of intelligent life. And we realized something." "What? That we had a choice? We could be the violent primitives everyone expected, or we could be something better. We could use all those thousands of years of warfare experience to protect instead of destroy. We could make all that death mean something. By dying for strangers? By fighting for a future where dying isn't necessary." Daeho looked at his glass. "Every human who volunteers for military service knows they might not come home. We accept it. Because we also know that if we don't fight, if we don't stand between the darkness and the light, then everything we've built means nothing." There was a knock on the door. Lieutenant Myung entered, her arm in a sling from the battle. "Sir, Coalition Command is on the line. They want to speak with you and Thauron?" They made their way to the communication center. Zalmuth's face appeared on the screen, along with several other coalition leaders. "Commander Daeho, Officer Thauron," Zalmuth began. "We've received intelligence reports. The Vrexians are withdrawing from multiple systems. Their forces are retreating to defensive positions." Thauron felt his heart skip. "Retreating? The Vrexians never retreat." "They are now," said another coalition leader, a Vril diplomat named Zixril. "Our intelligence indicates their hive mind has classified humans as an extreme threat. They're calling you." He checked his notes, "The ones who don't die." Daeho raised an eyebrow. "We die plenty, we're just good at making it count." Whatever the reason, this is the first time in 5 years we've seen coordinated Vrexian withdrawal. The destruction of their superhive has destabilized their entire production network. We estimate they've lost the ability to replace their forces effectively. "So we're winning?" Myung asked. "For the first time, yes, we're winning," the call ended. Around them, crew members who had been listening erupted in cheers. Humans hugged each other, some crying, others laughing. It was the first time Thauron had seen them show real emotion. Later, Thauron found himself back in the human section of the station. The place was packed, everyone celebrating. Someone had started cooking, filling the air with those strange, wonderful smells. Music played, the kind with words humans sang along to. He sat with Myung, Hyunsik, and Sergeant Jiwon, who had survived the superhive assault. Her arm was bandaged where the drone had bitten her, but she seemed cheerful. "I have to ask," Thauron said. "How do you do it? How do you face death with such calm?" Jiwon took a drink before answering. "We're not calm. We're terrified, every single time, but you don't show it. Showing it doesn't help. Fear is just information. It tells you danger is present. Once you acknowledge it, you can move past it and do what needs doing." "The Quelari believe fear is something to overcome," Thauron said. "Something to push through with honor and duty." "We're not that noble," Hyunsik said. "We don't fight because it's honorable. We fight because if we don't, everything we love dies." "It's not honor, it's spite." "Spite?" Myung laughed. Humanity's greatest virtue. The universe says we should die, and we say no. The Vrexians say they'll consume everything, and we say not today. We keep existing, keep fighting, simply to prove we can. That's insane. Yes, they all agreed. But as Thauron looked around the room at these humans celebrating their victory, mourning their dead, and already planning for the next battle, he finally understood. They weren't fearless, they were absolutely terrified. But they had learned something that other species hadn't. They had learned that terror was just a feeling, and feelings could be ignored when there was work to do. The next day, Thauron submitted a formal request to Coalition Command. He wanted permanent assignment as Human Liaison Officer. He needed to be there, to witness what happened next. Because he knew, everyone knew, that humanity had changed the war. His request was approved immediately. 2 weeks later, the human fleet prepared to move out to the next system. Thauron watched from the Indomitable as they made final preparations. The ships were still ugly, still covered in patches and makeshift repairs. But they flew. Deho stood beside him on the bridge. Having second thoughts about joining us permanently? Every day, Thauron admitted. But I need to see this through. I need to witness what happens when humanity goes to war. We're not special, you know. We're just too stubborn to quit. I know. That's what makes you terrifying. The fleet jumped to faster-than-light speed, heading toward the next battle. Thauron sat at his station and opened his personal log. He had been recording his observations of humans since they joined the Coalition. Now he added a final entry. Personal log, Officer Thauron, Day 147. I have fought beside humans now for several months. I have watched them bleed, die, and laugh in the face of destruction. I have seen them do impossible things simply because they decided those things needed doing. Today, the Vrexians learned what the rest of the galaxy will soon understand. Humanity doesn't need to be the strongest or the fastest. They don't need the best technology or the largest fleet. They simply need to be human. And that is the most terrifying thing in the galaxy. They feel fear like any species. They know they might die. They understand the odds. But when everything screams at them to run, to hide, to surrender, they take one step forward. Then another, then another. They keep moving until either they win or nothing remains to take another step. I asked Commander Deho once why humans carry this burden. He said someone has to stand between civilization and the darkness. I understand now. It's not that someone has to. It's that humans choose to. They volunteer for it. They embrace it. Because in their long, bloody history, they learned that the only thing worse than fighting is giving up. The Vrexians call them the ones who don't die. But that's wrong. Humans die constantly. They die in hundreds and thousands. What makes them terrifying is not that they don't die. It's that dying doesn't stop them. Each death just makes the survivors more determined. I have learned what terror truly is. It's not the fear you feel facing death. It's the realization that some species have moved beyond that fear, that they've weaponized their own mortality, that they'll trade their lives for victory without hesitation. The war is not over. The Vrexians still control vast territories. Many battles remain, many more will die. But for the first time since this war began, I believe we will win. Not because our weapons are superior or our tactics flawless, but because we have humans fighting beside us. And humans, I have learned, simply do not know how to lose. Thauron closed his log and looked around the bridge. Humans worked at their stations, calm and focused. Outside the viewport, stars streaked past as they traveled toward the next battle. Somewhere ahead, the Vrexians waited, probably trying to understand what had happened, trying to comprehend this new threat. Thauron almost felt sorry for them. The Indomitable dropped out of faster-than-light travel into a system full of Vrexian ships. Alarms blared, weapons charged. Deho stood calmly in the center of the bridge. All ships, this is Commander Deho. We've got work to do. Let's make it count. The human fleet accelerated into battle. And Thauron, for the first time in his military career, smiled.